in her luggage. Brittney Griner, a woman that really, really hated this country. I mean, she talked a lot of trash about that. Maybe she will continue to wake up more. Maybe she can actually influence other WNBA players and actually NBA players say, hey, take that much of a stand. She also knelt during the national anthem in 2020. Now, I don't think that Brittney Griner should have been on his team. I mean, she was pretty much out for pretty much all the first half of the WNBA Summer Olympics. Back in 2020, when BLM protests that were allegedly mostly peaceful, I still can't get over it. Brittney Griner told the Associated Press when asked about wearing the Team USA jersey. She said, quote,
she says it flat out. The only reason Griner made it home is because she's a lesbian, she's black. Right after reminding everybody the US handed over a literal arms dealer, Victor Bout, to get her back. I went and checked the actual reporting on that swap, and here's the thing. Every serious outlet covering the Bout for Griner trade framed it as a straightforward hostage negotiation, the kind the State Department runs constantly, with zero official language about her identity being the deciding factor. That's this host's own theory, not something State ever said on the record. Is it a wild, inflammatory way to explain a prisoner swap? Absolutely, and I get why it's going to make people furious either way. But you can't just assert a motive like that as fact and move on like it's settled. Speaking of things this channel treats as settled that really aren't, let's get into the anthem quote that's the whole reason we're talking about her today.
They're actually more woke than the NBA. Because probably until recently, guys, you still had WNBA players not actually going out on the court for the national anthem. Brittney Griner was definitely one of them. In 2020, she said that the national anthem should not be played. Well, guess what?
The national anthem is definitely hit different. That's Griner, post-Russia, describing standing on US soil, hearing it again. And look, whatever you think of her politics, that line reads as completely sincere. Anyone who spent 10 months in a Russian penal colony on a paraphernalia charge is going to feel something different about home when they land. The host wants to frame this purely as a political conversion story, but people who've actually studied hostage psychology will tell you this is a textbook response. Captivity reshapes how you feel about the place you came from, full stop. It doesn't automatically mean somebody flipped their entire worldview. That nuance is going to get lost the second this clip hits social media, and honestly, that's the whole game with content like this.
Actually stood for the national anthem. You know why, guys? Because she actually faced real oppression in Russia. Not like these other NBA players or WNBA players that want a virtue signal. No, she was actually in a country that I really wouldn't want anybody to go to their prisons.
Back in 2020, in the middle of the George Floyd protests, Griner told reporters point blank she didn't think the WNBA should play the anthem at all that season. That's a real quote, that happened, and the league, remember, this was the same year the entire WNBA dedicated its season to Breonna Taylor and social justice, largely went along with players sitting it out. So contextually, Griner wasn't some outlier freelancing. She was very much in step with where her league was in 2020. The host is treating this like some rogue extremist take, but if you actually look at that WNBA season, it was the norm, not the exception. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable for everybody. What happened right after she said this?
2020 Olympics in Tokyo, which actually happened in 2021 because of the Wuhan virus, there were some woke antics that were actually going on. Remember Gwen Berry, those kind of people? Yeah. Brittney Griner now is talking about the national anthem, guys, in the Olympics. Let's get into it, guys. Make sure you
This is the line that's going to end up in every comment section. America is not a racist place. This is the best country on the planet. And the host immediately pivots that into maybe she can influence other WNBA and NBA players. That's a big leap from one athlete's personal reflection on gratitude to being cast as a spokesperson for a political 180 across two entire leagues. People experience captivity and homecoming very differently, and using one person's private emotional moment as a cudgel against every other athlete who's ever taken a knee is exactly the kind of framing that makes this genre of content go viral. accurate or not.
Let's look at this right here. WNBA star Brittney Griner is part of the United States women's basketball team that will compete in Paris at the 2024 Summer Olympics. Back in 2020, when BLM protests that were allegedly mostly peaceful, I still can't get over that guy. CNN with
The host can't resist bringing up the old, fiery but mostly peaceful CNN chyron from 2020 while sliding into Griner's BLM solidarity. That clip has been a punchline for years now. Fair enough, it's genuinely become shorthand for media framing gone wrong, but pairing it with Griner's activism here is doing a lot of work to imply her stance was somehow illegitimate or overblown from the jump. Worth remembering, 2020 was an extraordinary year, nationwide protests after George Floyd's murder, and a huge chunk of professional sports, not just Griner, whole leagues, paused or restructured how they handled the anthem, painting her as some lone radical erases just how mainstream that moment actually was inside pro sports.
Take that much of a stand. She also knelt during the national anthem in 2020. But after Brittney Griner was detained in Russia for having drug paraphernalia in her luggage, the United States government agreed to a prisoner swap to free Griner from custody. Upon her return to the United States, Griner changed her tune.
Colin Kaepernick sold a bunch of lies to the American people. That's the host's take, using Griner's change of heart as some kind of rebuttal to Kaepernick's entire protest movement. But that's comparing two completely different situations. Kaepernick knelt over police brutality and racial injustice as a policy stance. Griner's shift happened after 10 months in Russian custody for a drug charge. Using one to discredit the other isn't really an argument. It's a vibe, and it's the kind of leap that gets made a lot in this corner of sports media. Whatever you think of Kaepernick's politics, his protest and Griner's homecoming emotions aren't really the same conversation.
Brittney Griner told the Associated Press when asked about wearing the Team USA jersey. She said, quote, "It means everything to me, honestly. For me to now have the honor to wear it again and potentially win gold is icing on a cake for everything." And this is going to be Brittney Griner's, or Bob Griner.
Right out of the gate, the host lays out what actually happened. Griner brought vape cartridges with cannabis oil into Russia, which under Russian law got treated as drug smuggling, and she's on record saying her heart sank the moment security found them. That part's not in dispute. It's well documented. She pled guilty, and it led to a 9-year sentence before the prisoner exchange. Where this gets murky is the host layering "she knew it was illegal" onto that as some kind of gotcha. International travelers get caught by foreign drug laws they didn't fully clock all the time, and Russia in particular has notoriously harsh, unevenly enforced statutes. Doesn't make it not her fault, but it's a lot more complicated than "she knew and did it anyway."
He took to change Brittney Griner's mindset. She still may be a leftist. I'm pretty sure that she is. But it definitely is hitting different now, guys. Maybe she will continue to wake up more. Maybe she can actually influence other WNBA players and actually NBA players.
The host goes for the ironic gut punch here. Griner didn't have to hear the American anthem locked up, but she did have to hear Russia's, which shares its melody with the old Soviet anthem. That's actually a solid, factually accurate detail. The Russian Federation did re-adopt the Soviet-era melody with new lyrics in 2000, so that's real, and it's a genuinely sharp piece of commentary. Where I'd push back is the implication that hearing it every day for months in a penal colony is some kind of poetic justice rather than, part of what most human rights organizations describe as a genuinely brutal, high-risk detention experience. The irony lands. The framing around it is doing a lot of heavy lifting toward "she deserved this."
That really, really hated this country. She talked a lot of trash about the national anthem. She actually said she wouldn't go out there for the national anthem. These WNBA players, man, they're actually more woke than the NBA. Because probably until recently, guys, you still had WNBA.
She broke the law, she did. The host says it almost begrudgingly, right after conceding Russia's prisons are nowhere anybody should want to end up. That's actually one of the more balanced moments in the whole video, acknowledging the legal reality without pretending the punishment was proportionate. Legal analysts who covered the case at the time made similar points. Yes, she technically violated Russian law, but the 9-year sentence and the conditions were widely viewed internationally as disproportionate, arguably used as leverage for a high-profile prisoner swap, so even the host, mid-rant, ends up landing somewhere close to the consensus read on this.
Brittney Griner brought over an illegal substance into Russia that she knew was actually illegal. Because doing an interview, man, with, I believe it was the ABC, she actually did say that her heart kind of stopped because she knew that it was over with when the Russians actually found the vape canisters in her luggage. Brittney Griner, a woman.
Griner's AP quote hits different too. It means everything to me. Potentially winning gold is icing on a cake for everything. That's someone who nearly didn't come home talking about representing the country that fought to get her out. The host uses this to build the "she's proud to be American now" arc, and functionally, sure, that reading tracks with her public comments. But it's also just what you'd expect any athlete to say heading into an Olympic Games after the year she'd had. Gratitude for the platform doesn't have to mean a wholesale ideological reversal, even if that's the more shareable narrative.
Brittney Griner got locked up in Russia, and guess what? She didn't have to hear the national anthem. But when she was over there in Russia, she had to hear the Russian national anthem, which is the same thing as the Soviet national anthem. I wonder how she actually felt about hearing that every day. Now, when Brittney Griner came back to the WNBA, because
the host questions whether Griner should even be on the 2024 Paris roster, pointing out she'd barely played 1, maybe 2 games in the first half of that WNBA season. That's a fair basketball question, separate from all the politics. Team USA picks based on a track record built over years, not just a single season's minutes, and Griner's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist with a long track record. Still, it's a legitimate roster debate that a lot of NBA and WNBA analysts were actually having at the time, health and conditioning concerns included. This is the one moment in the whole video that's straight basketball talk instead of culture war.
Like these other NBA players or WNBA players that want a virtue signal. No, she was actually in a country that I really wouldn't want anybody to go to their prisons. But Brittney Griner broke the law. She did. Now Brittney Griner is on Team USA, and they're getting ready to actually play in the Paris Olympics.
Closing out, the host doubles down. She put herself in that situation. She paid the price, and, his words, I'm pretty sure she hated every minute of it. No argument there. Nobody's out here saying a Russian penal colony was a pleasant experience. But then he pivots straight into she still may be a leftist, as if her political identity and her trauma are somehow in tension, like she owes the audience a permanent ideological conversion in exchange for sympathy. That's the tell for this whole video. It's less about the anthem and more about using Griner's ordeal as proof for a broader culture war argument, whether or not she'd frame it that way herself.
Griner, who previously knelt for national anthem, changes tune on USA ahead of Olympics. So Brittney Griner seems to be being pretty consistent in her change of heart on a national anthem. You know, Colin Kaepernick, man, sold a bunch of lies